First, let's start with this case. I'm part of a social group that hosted a white elephant gift exchange last night. Participation was entirely optional, and no one was pressured to join. The event was split into two pricing tiers, $25 to $50 and $75 to $100. Most members opted for the less expensive tier, which was completely acceptable and free of judgment. However, 9 of us, including myself, chose the more expensive tier. When it was my turn to pick a gift, I was third, I chose one that was beautifully wrapped, thinking it might be a good choice. However, I was disappointed to find it was a hot chocolate set that wouldn't have met even the lowest threshold of the pricing tier we were in. The reaction from others in the group suggested they felt the same way: awkward looks and visible discomfort. I noticed one member, Jen, avoiding eye contact and looking embarrassed, which led me to suspect she was the one who brought the gift. Unsurprisingly, no one chose to steal the hot chocolate set during the exchange. Meanwhile, Jen ended up with a brand new Keurig coffee maker, one of the nicer gifts in our tier. It was clear to me and others that her contribution was not in line with the agreed-upon guidelines. I discreetly mentioned this to our group leader. She admitted she wasn't happy about it either, as she had previously advised Jen not to participate in the higher-tier exchange, knowing that Jen wasn't in a great financial situation. However, Jen had insisted it wouldn't be a problem. The leader asked me to keep the mood positive and not bring up the issue during the event, as the goal was for everyone to have a good time. I agreed and didn't mention the gift again for the rest of the evening. This morning, I received a series of long texts from Jen. She expressed anger and frustration, accusing me of demeaning her by complaining about her gift. She said it was unfair of me to criticize her when she's struggling financially, and suggested I had no understanding of her circumstances. She also argued that her income shouldn't disqualify her from enjoying nice things. Rather than engaging with her directly, I forwarded her texts to our group leader. Later, I learned that Jen would no longer be a member of our social group. While I didn't make that decision, I do feel bad about it. I know how much this group meant to her, and I don't harbor any personal resentment toward her. I simply felt that participating in the higher-tier exchange with a gift that didn't meet the agreed-upon standard was unfair to the rest of us. So I'm left wondering, was I in the wrong here? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. This isn't like typical friend-family gifting, where the thought still counts for something. This sounds more like a club with rules for participation to ensure everyone benefits at roughly the same level. And Jen broke the rules. Every piece of this was under her control. She could have not participated at all. She could have participated in the more affordable category. She instead gambled on social politeness and people allowing her to snag an expensive item without it costing her. And in a purely social group of friends or a family gathering, it likely would have worked because people wouldn't want to appear unkind or greedy by complaining. For an annoying cousin, I'd have kept quiet. But if I buy a raffle ticket that guarantees a $100 value prize at my local community center, I'm absolutely going to complain if they gave me a box of hot chocolate in return. You're not in the wrong. She took advantage of the group. She wanted the more expensive group to get herself a nice gift and decided for herself that you are all too polite to point out that she is way under the price limit. Honestly, the group leader should have talked to her about that and made her exchange the present she got with the one she brought. Why is it fair that everyone should pay $75, $100 and then get a $4 chocolate gift? There is a price range for a reason, so yeah, kicking her was the right thing to do. The amount of white elephant gift crazy posts I've seen this year is definitely surprising me, although it probably shouldn't. Makes me grateful that my family's white elephant exchange is standard and boring. But for this one, you're not in the wrong. It definitely feels like Jen was trying to game the system, and when she got called out for it, she got upset. Yes, it sucks that she's dealing with a lot of hardships, and that's something I think most people will sympathize with, but it doesn't excuse her actions and behavior. She should have chosen to stick with the cheaper end of the exchange, or just sat out entirely. Next up, I, 25-year-old male, live with my brother Jack, 27-year-old male, and his wife Jill, 25-year-old female. It all started when Jack and Jill announced they were expecting a baby. Their lease was about to end, and my parents invited them to stay in our family home. The day they moved in, Jack asked me why I hadn't moved out of my room yet. I was confused and asked what he meant. He explained that he and Jill expected to take over my room, and I would move into the much smaller guest room. I refused, but my parents sided with them. After an argument, I ultimately lost and was forced to relocate to the guest room. Things escalated when Jill began complaining about my cooking habits. I typically prepare scrambled eggs with mozzarella cheese and avocado for breakfast, but she said the smell made her feel sick. She asked me to stop, and I refused. My parents got involved, and I was pressured to accommodate her. Eventually, I gave in and stopped cooking my preferred meals. The same pattern repeated with other foods I liked to cook, all under the reasoning that I needed to be considerate of her pregnancy. Jill then started to issue demands around the house. We were often alone during the day since my parents and Jack worked, and she clearly expected me to become her personal helper. When I refused, she became upset, leading to another major argument with Jack and my parents. They informed me that Jill's pregnancy was high risk and required bed rest, so I was expected to help her. I pointed out that Jack was responsible for supporting her, not me. After much back and forth, Jill's cousin eventually came over periodically to assist her. When Jill gave birth to my nephew, I congratulated them but kept my distance. I'm not fond of babies and chose to stay out of their way. However, Jill frequently asked me to help with small tasks, like watching the baby while she took a shower or prepared food. I always refused, and each refusal caused another argument. The tension reached its peak last Friday when Jill asked me to watch the baby so she could go to the pharmacy to buy formula. I declined, and we argued. She decided to leave anyway, grabbing her purse as she headed for the door. I told her that if she left the baby unattended, I would call the authorities for child abandonment. I was serious, and she knew it. This led to her breaking down, screaming that I was a terrible person, and retreating to her room in tears. She was visibly shaken and appeared to have a complete mental breakdown. When Jack and my parents came home, we had the biggest argument yet. Jack accused me of hating Jill and my nephew and being selfish. I explained that I refused to form a bond with my nephew because I believe they will use it against me. My parents declared that they were disappointed in me, calling me selfish and saying that I needed to either help or move out. Now I'm seriously considering moving out. Am I in the wrong? Let's start judging. The amount of you're in the wrongs. Op is a paying tenant in this house. He has no obligation whatsoever to watch this child. You're not in the wrong. Dude, I don't think that you're an idiot, but you are a bit dramatic. And I am too. So here's what you should do. Move out and stop paying for everything. See how your family reacts when half of the money is gone. You're not in the wrong. I was going to say, you're in the wrong. And then I read your comment that you pay half of the bills. Now I say you're not in the wrong. But you're 25 years old now. It's time to call their bluff. It's time to tell them, great news. I found my own place. I'll be moving there and I'll discontinue paying the bills here because I won't be living here. Next up, my in-laws are celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary, and my wife, along with her siblings, decided to create a large framed photo collage as a gift. The collage includes a variety of pictures, their wedding photos, childhood pictures of my wife and her siblings, a group photo of the whole family taken at our wedding last April, and separate pictures of her 3 married brothers with their wives and children. It also includes a picture of her recently engaged brother and his fiancée. However, there's no picture of me and my wife together, nor do I appear in any of the group photos, including the family picture from our wedding. I brought this up to my wife, asking why there wasn't a photo of us in the collage. Her immediate response sounded annoyed. It's not about you. It's about my parents, my family, and the grandkids. I clarified, I understand it's not about me. But if there are pictures of your married brothers with their wives, shouldn't there also be one of us? She replied, It's not about my married brothers and their wives. It's to show off the grandkids. I pointed out, okay, but what about the picture of newly engaged brother and his fiancée? There aren't any grandkids in that picture. At this point, my wife got visibly upset and snapped. "You're really annoying me right now. My siblings and I worked really hard to put this together, and now you're making it all about you because you're not in it. Grow up. You'll be in other pictures in the future." Honestly, I don't care that much about not being in the collage itself. What's really bothering me is my wife's reaction. I feel hurt and frustrated by how dismissive and defensive she was when I brought it up. Am I the bad guy for pointing this out? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Seems like an intentional decision. Multiple people put thought into the photo selections. Surely your name came up during the selection process. Surely photos you were in were available for selection, yet vetoed from the collage. Why? Your wife isn't telling you why. She knows the reason. I'm guessing either you kinda know the reason too, but she doesn't want to get into it or confirm your suspicions. Feels like your wife went from 0 to 60 really, really fast. And she obviously didn't like you pointing out all the flaws in her defense. This doesn't look good. There is obviously a reason you were left out. And make no mistake, you were left out on purpose. And your wife knows why. She needs to tell you. The cynic in me believes that you might not be a member of this family in time, and your wife is ensuring that there is no permanent reminder of you in something that will obviously be on display in prime location. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. And I think the way you approached the topic was totally fine. I think your wife is being defensive because she knows she messed up and doesn't want to own it. Next up, my wife and I have been married for almost 5 years. This past summer, we hit a rough patch and even considered separating. The issue stemmed from my dishonesty about finances, which I eventually confessed. At first, my wife wanted to leave, and during that time, my brother decided to share his unsolicited opinion about our relationship. He presented me with a list of reasons why he believed my wife has narcissistic personality disorder and accused me of being a victim of abuse. For context, I've been a victim of narcissistic abuse before, in a previous relationship and with my mother-in-law, so this accusation was especially unsettling. While my wife and I both have our struggles, as I do, clearly, I know my wife is neither a narcissist nor abusive. His claims were unfounded, and no one else in my family shares his views. I was upset by his accusations, but we ended the conversation with what I thought was a mutual understanding, and I moved on. Fast forward 6 months. My wife and I have worked hard to rebuild our marriage. We've been to marriage counseling, and we're both in individual therapy. Our relationship is stronger, healthier, and more loving than it's ever been. The rest of my family has been supportive and happy to see us thriving again. This brings us to the holidays. My brother has been hosting Christmas for the past few years, and I was looking forward to celebrating with my parents and grandmother. However, just a week before Christmas, my brother decided to bring up his concerns about my wife again. He told me he still believes she's a mean person who doesn't care about others. When I asked him for examples, the best he could offer were these. He overheard her complaining about an old boss. She was actually excitedly sharing with my mom about her new job, and the comments weren't nasty or inappropriate. He feels I've changed, though he couldn't specify how or why this is bad. This has left me feeling conflicted. I don't want to bring my wife into an environment where the host clearly thinks poorly of her. It feels disrespectful to her and to our progress as a couple. At the same time, I'm sad because I do want to spend Christmas with my parents and grandmother, who have always been supportive and welcoming to my wife. I'm not saying I'll never attend another family gathering, but given how fresh this situation is, I think it might be best for my wife and me to skip this Christmas. It feels like the healthiest choice for both of us right now, even though it's a difficult one. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. I mean, can't you spend time with your parents and grandmother in any other setting at any other time? You're not in the wrong. There are all sorts of legitimate reasons for saying no to an invite, and this is definitely one of them. You and your wife are enjoying the outcome of the hard work you've put into repairing your relationship. You both are working with professional therapists. If your wife was a narcissist, hopefully the therapist would catch that. You don't need your brother to keep asserting his unprofessional opinion. That said, You have a history of abusive relationships, and your brother may feel extra protective of you. It may have skewed his initial perception of your wife. You could let him know you appreciate his concern and that you are working with a therapist. You and your wife are getting a fresh start in your relationship. It's better than ever, and you hope with time he'll come around to seeing that. You're not in the wrong. Skip away. I'd have had words with my brother that would have been very impolite. Do something fun and memorable with your wife that emphasizes how much the two of you have grown in your relationship with each other. And congratulations.